Deterministic versus emergent design. Defining determinism. Determinism is a philosophical belief that everything that could possibly happen independently has its own definite result or consequence. It's kind of a cause and effect style relationship. If you think of it in terms of computers, computers are normally designed in such a way that when you input certain data, you always get the same result. And that's called a deterministic algorithm. The deterministic design has 4 different steps. The first step includes brainstorming strategies. You list possible strategies to reach the functional requirements. And then basically that's the what of what you're trying to do. And then you narrow those down by using, risk-based assessment to determine which strategy would be the least risky, the one that's definitely going to get your results, or the one that you're going to pick with a deterministic design. Step 2 of the process is when you are brainstorming concepts, and that's basically when you're determining the how. You determine how to implement the strategies. Step 3 is coming up with the modules, the building blocks of the concept, so to speak, or the sections. So if you're designing a car, it would be things like the tires or the windshield wipers. The next step would be components. You determine the details of the modules, so that would be like the software or hardware. Or for instance, what kind of tires are you going to use? Are you going to use race car tires? Or are you going to use, minivan tires? When designing, it's good to think about Gagne's theory of instruction, and it has 3 different components. There's the taxonomy of learning outcomes, the conditions of learning, and the 9 events of instruction. The 9 events of instruction are designed to have events happen that are needed for the actual learning to occur. It starts out with gaining attention. And you can do this by, telling a story or something of that nature. Then you inform the learners of the objective and what they're going to learn. The next step would be to stimulate recall of prior knowledge. So maybe remind them of a concept that was a prerequisite. The next step is presenting the stimulus, and then providing learning guidance, eliciting performance, providing feedback, assessing performance, and enhancing retention and transfer. In emergent instruction, you're basically learning by design. In this way, in order for learning to occur, 3 components have to happen. There has to be some sort of experience for the learning to happen. And when the learner comes across this experience or, experiences this experience, the learner has to be equipped in order to deal with the experience. Excuse me. And then the learner has to be able to find meaning and understanding within the experience in order for learning to occur. Emergent learning uses state models. Basically, the learners progress through the process differently, but they still emerge at the same finish line. So, for instance, 5 different people could put quarters into a Coke machine, but they might not necessarily, each time put in the same sequence of, quarters, dimes, and nickels. And that's kind of the concept of that. Excuse me. Learning spaces need to be designed in a way that the learner can start at the level he or she is at And then progression happens based on the level of competence with this design. So, if there's a particular section that you already know how to do, you can skip ahead with this particular style of design, which is kind of nice for fast learners. With content deconstruction basically is when you are doing task analysis, determining each and every little task that goes into, a procedure in order to teach it, in order to come up with the steps to teach it. So there are many different ways you can do that, and you can do that by inventorying the different tasks that are involved, describing tasks, selecting tasks, sequencing the tasks and the task components, analyzing the task and content levels, and then listing objectives. I'm sorry, I think I'm getting sick. Adjacent possibility is basically the whole idea of the emergent design. There is this, kind of like almost an alternate reality, that can happen with this type of style of learning. No two learners are necessarily going to take the same pathway to get the same result. They may have the same potential inputs, but have different outcomes, so they might not necessarily take the same path, in other words, is what I'm trying to say. And I hope that you like this presentation.